In this video, we're going to talk about the data for the charts of currency pairs and what I use and where it comes from. This is TradingView. So on this charting software, there's a couple different data feeds that you can look at. Whereas on your broker, if you're using charting software with your broker, typically that data is with the data that broker collects so that data reflects what the price does and how the candles look. I'm going to show you, if you just pull up the Australian dollar, US dollar, which is what I'm on, you can see all these exchanges that they're on: FXCM, Wanda, Forex.com, ICE. There is a data feed that is a consolidated data feed. It used to be called IDC, but now it is ICE. And this data feed, as you can see, it looks different than the one I was just on. It's still Australian dollar, US dollar, but this is the IDC data. So this is a composite data that takes an average of a lot of different exchanges and tries to normalize a price. So for instance, if you're trading a stock and it's on the New York Stock Exchange, that is the only exchange that stock is traded on, so the charts are more accurate. In the currency market, because you can trade currency pairs in all different countries across different brokers, there's not a central exchange for the currency market like there would be a stock. That's why there's different data feeds. And these are brokers. This FXCM, Wanda, Forex.com, those are brokers. Now, the composite data used to just be called IDC. I think ICE might also be a broker, but whenever you click on the ICE, it does say IDC up here. So this is the composite data that tries to average. Years ago, I've been trading now about 7 years, the data on the higher time frames, I'm going to switch to the daily. I went from the 5-minute. On the daily, there's not as big of a difference now as there used to be in the data. You can see I'm on the ICE or IDC right now, and I'm going to switch to FXCM, and you can watch it switch over. You can see the candles look pretty similar on the daily chart. So watch those candles. I'm going to switch back over to the IDC data. So it looks pretty similar on the higher time frames, and the main data feeds that I use are the IDC and the FXCM. You can use other ones as long as you go back and kind of look at the data and you think it looks clean. These are the only two that I've always used. But the FXCM, in my opinion, is better than it used to be years ago. And the main reason for switching back and forth is whenever you go down to the lower time frames, the 5-minute, or even let's look at the 1 hour. So this is the FXCM data. So this is one broker's data. And then this is the composite data. And you can see The composite data on the Aussie US dollar on these lower time frames, it's a little wickier. The wicks are a little longer, and they just don't look as clean. And on certain pairs, the IDC, which is what we're looking at now, will look cleaner, and I will use the IDC data on the pairs where it still looks clean. Whenever they start looking more wicky and not as clean looking, then I typically use the FXCM data. So again, this is the IDC, and now we're going to switch to FXCM and just look at the wicks of the candles, and you'll see how they kind of smooth out. You see how it's less wicky. It just looks a little cleaner, and in my opinion, it's just easier to look at, and the data is still, for technical analysis, you're still pretty much going to get the same results. But I just like on the lower time frames to use the FXCM on certain pairs where it looks wicky. I'll switch back again to the IDC data. You can see right here in this section, see how it's just wicky looking. And when I say wicky, I just mean the wick of the body. Excuse me, the wick of the candlestick. It just looks out of whack. And in my opinion, that's because the composite data if you average a lot of different broker data over all the different brokers there are, it's going to have a lot more data points that are out of line. And so when you go back to FXCM, which they may have some composite feature too, they might average in some other ones too, but it just looks cleaner. So a lot of pairs I trade, I'm using FXCM data, and the pairs where the IDC data is still clean on the lower time frames, I still use the IDC. Again, on the higher time frames, it does not matter as much as it used to. I don't know why, but in the last year or two, the FXCM and the IDC data, it's not as big of a difference as it used to be, and I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I think it looks better than it used to, as far as FXCM not being that different. There's not as big of a discrepancy in the candles per hour or per day or whatever time frame you're on. They are more accurate, in my opinion, in the last few years. So whatever you use, just try to stick to it. And for each pair, like if you always use FXCM on the Australian dollar, try to stick with it so you're consistent. But if you're going through and you're new and you're trying to add different currency pairs to your watch list, and you're confused by all these different exchanges, these are just different brokers because there's not a central exchange for the currency pairs. So the closest thing you're going to get is a composite data like ICE, which is IDC. I think they use over 600 data sources or something along those lines to compile the composite data. But don't weigh too much on this. The main thing for me is just making sure the charts look clean. I have never used Wanda or Forex.com or these other ones. The main ones I use are FXCM and ICE, which is the composite data. And again, I don't know a whole lot about these other data feeds. I'm sure FXCM has some composite component built in, because it does look pretty clean and accurate now compared to 5 years ago, in my opinion. But when you're going through and selecting different pairs, I just wanted to clarify what all these different um, data feeds are, or exchanges, which they're not exchanges. That's just, if you're on a stock, it's going to tell you that Tesla's on the NASDAQ exchange, where, again, currency markets, there's not a central exchange, whereas Tesla, you can only trade it on the NASDAQ. But anyways, I hope that clears up if you're confused on what pair to add to your watch list and when to use the IDC or the FXCM. Again, whenever it looks cleaner and on the lower time frames and you're starting to get all those wicks, try the FXCM or an actual broker as the data feed, and it should clear up the lower time frames so that you can analyze them better. So I hope that helps and makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions. Just post them in the comments and I will get to them.